It is evening when the phone rings at the home of Jacob and Vera Scott. A man answers on the other end of the line and asks,
"Is Dorothy home?"
Annoyed, Vera hangs up. Dorothy is their daughter who has been missing for years. And the unknown man on the phone is the only one who knows where she is. But instead of helping them, he mocks them by calling them every week and asking the same question.
"Is Dorothy home?"
Dorothy Jane Scott was born on April 23, 1948, to Jacob and Vera Scott. Not much is known about her childhood and teenage years. As an adult, she lives in Stan, California, with her Aunt Shanti and her 4-year-old son, Sean. Sean was born in 1976, and his father, Dennis Terry, lives in Fairgrove, Missouri at the time. He left Dorothy while she was pregnant, and she has been raising Sean on her own ever since. She sacrifices everything to give Sean a carefree childhood. She works as a secretary in 2 shops in Anaheim. Both shops, which once belonged to her father, are now owned by John Colcher. Among other things, they sell incense sticks, lava lamps, and similar products. Dorothy is described by everyone as domestic and reserved. She is a devout Christian, does not drink alcohol, and does not take drugs. Her parents, who live only 20 minutes away, support her and take care of Sean while Dorothy is at work. In early 1980, when she is 31 years old, she begins receiving strange phone calls from an unknown man. His messages alternate between declarations of love and threats. What is particularly disturbing is that the unknown caller seems to know Dorothy's life inside out. He describes what she is wearing, where she has been, and what she has been doing. This leads her to believe that he is watching her every day. Once, he tells her to go to her car. When Dorothy does, she finds a wilted red rose on the windshield. Another time, he threatens her on the phone.
"Okay, now you're coming towards me. And when I catch you alone, I'll cut you into pieces so that no one will ever find you."
Dorothy is understandably frightened. At the same time, the caller's voice sounds familiar to her, but she can't quite place it. The threats eventually become so stressful that Dorothy hardly leaves the house anymore. But the police don't take her seriously, so she considers buying a gun. She also signs up for a karate class in May, so that she'll be prepared if the worst comes to the worst. On May 28, 1980, a normal working day, Dorothy has a meeting at work in the evening. During the meeting, she notices that her colleague Conrad Bostrand looks ill. She notices a red spot on his arm that looks like a worsening infection. Dorothy convinces Conrad to go to the hospital and offers to take him to UC Irvine Medical Center with her 18-year-old colleague, Pam Head. On the way, they stop briefly at Dorothy's parents' house. While some articles state that Dorothy stopped there to check on her son, Sean, Pam later testifies that Sean had been at work with Dorothy until that point, and that she only dropped him off at her parents' house at that location. In any case, during this stop, Dorothy changes her black scarf for a warmer red one on her mother's advice before continuing on their way. At the hospital, it turns out that Conrad has been bitten by a black widow, a poisonous spider. His treatment takes several hours. Meanwhile, Dorothy and Pam stay in the waiting room and read newspapers. Pam later confirms that Dorothy was with her the whole time and that no one seemed suspicious to her. Around 11 p.m., Conrad is discharged. Dorothy offers to drive her car, a white Toyota station wagon, to the exit so Conrad doesn't have to walk so far. While he and Pam are picking up a prescription at the hospital pharmacy, Dorothy goes to get the car. But she doesn't come back. Pam and Conrad wait several minutes for her until they suddenly see Dorothy's car speed past them. They wave, but the car drives through a stop sign without stopping and disappears into the darkness. At first, they think Dorothy has had an emergency with her son. However, when she does not return, they call Dorothy's parents and learn that she never arrived there and has not contacted her parents. In the early hours of the morning, her family reports her missing. The police do not initially launch an investigation, assuming that she has disappeared voluntarily. At around 4:30 a.m. on May 29th, the police find Dorothy's car in an alley about 16 kilometers from the hospital. It is burning fiercely. The headlights are still on and the driver's door is open. A gas canister is found in the trunk, which was used to start the fire. The interior of the car is completely destroyed. There is no sign of the driver or Dorothy. Sergeant Bob Taft, the lead investigator, says that the vehicle was obviously abandoned in a hurry and that they are now launching an investigation as they believe a crime has been committed. Dorothy's family is instructed not to speak to the press. Investigators believe that the unknown caller who harassed Dorothy has something to do with her disappearance. However, there are no clues as to his identity. Who he is and why he threatened Dorothy remains a mystery. 2 weeks after her disappearance, the phone rings at Dorothy's parents' house. Vera Scott is home alone and desperately hopes it's Dorothy. But when she picks up the phone, an unknown man speaks. He doesn't introduce himself, but simply asks if she's related to Dorothy. Vera says yes. The man then simply says, "I've got her," and hangs up. The police are unable to make any progress with their investigation, so Dorothy's parents decide to involve the press. Soon after, the media reports on Dorothy's mysterious disappearance and the ominous stalker. The case causes a huge stir, and the residents of Stanton are particularly concerned. Everyone wonders who the unknown caller could be. On June 12, 1980, the alleged perpetrator contacts the Orange County Register newspaper himself. Pat Riley, the editor-in-chief, receives a call from a man who claims to have killed Dorothy. The caller says,
"I killed her. I killed Dorothy. She was the love of my life. I caught her cheating on me with another man. She denied that she was seeing anyone else. I killed her."
The man reveals details that make it clear that he must have actually seen Dorothy shortly before she disappeared. He describes Dorothy wearing a red scarf. Since she changed her scarf shortly before her stay in the hospital, it is highly likely that the caller is indeed the stalker, as he has knowledge of the crime. He also knows that her colleague Conrad was treated for a spider bite. The man even claims that Dorothy called him from the hospital. But Pam, who was with Dorothy the whole time, denies this. She emphasizes that Dorothy did not make any calls. The caller's further statements sound as if he really believes he was in a relationship with Dorothy. Dorothy's friends and family know nothing about an alleged relationship. Her parents are certain that she did not date the stalker. They suspect that the man has convinced himself that he was in a relationship with her. The police initially focused their investigation on her ex-husband, Terry. He was in town just a few days before she disappeared, and the two had a heated argument. Terry wanted to take custody of their son, Sean, after Dorothy had sole custody for the past 4 years. Dorothy refused, which led to a heated argument. But Terry has an alibi. He was on a 2-day bus trip to Missouri. A few hours after Dorothy's disappearance, he even called her parents from his home. It would have been impossible for him to kidnap her and then get home so quickly. After that, the investigation stalled. For 4 years, there was no progress. But Dorothy's parents kept receiving calls from an unknown man. Almost every Wednesday afternoon, he calls them and asks if Dorothy is home, claims to have her, or confesses to killing her. It seems as if he is watching the Scotts, because he only calls when Vera is home alone. The calls are so short that the police cannot trace them. In April 1984, however, Jacob Scott, Dorothy's father, is home early one day and answers the phone. After that, the calls stop abruptly. The Scotts therefore suspect that Jacob knows the stalker personally and was afraid of being recognized by his voice. On August 6, 1984, a construction worker makes a shocking discovery. He and his team are preparing to lay pipes for telephone lines when he stumbles across human and animal bones about 10 meters from Santa Ana Canyon Road. The human remains lie next to the bones of a dog. Due to a bushfire in 1982, the bones are partially charred, suggesting that they have been there for several years. A turquoise ring and a watch are also found nearby, which Dorothy's mother identifies as belonging to Dorothy. The watch stopped at 12:30 a.m., about an hour after Dorothy was last seen. Some suspect that the perpetrator deliberately stopped the watch when he killed her. On August 14, 1984, dental examinations confirm that the remains are indeed those of Dorothy. Unfortunately, after all these years, the exact cause of death cannot be determined. The role played by the dog bones remains unclear. One theory is that the perpetrator buried Dorothy's body and placed the dog on top of it to mislead cadaver dogs. But this is only speculation. After the press reports on the discovery of Dorothy's remains, the calls to her parents begin again. The man repeatedly asks if Dorothy is home. The police install a recording device in the Scott's house, but the unknown caller never stays on the line long enough to be identified. To this day, he remains unknown. However, there are a few suspects whom I would like to introduce to you below. Michael James Butler was born in 1946. He's a large, bear-like man with a full beard who wears distinctive hats and is very religious. Michael, who is simply called Mike by many, is a headstrong person. He lives away from civilization in the mountains and avoids social contact. However, he's very close to his sister Rosemary, a well-known singer. Rosemary worked with Dorothy for a while, and Mike himself worked as a mechanic across the street from Dorothy's office. The two knew each other casually, and it is said that Mike was in love with her. That is why he became a focus of the investigation after Dorothy's disappearance. A statement he makes during his interrogation is particularly strange. He claims that he wanted to marry Dorothy, a rather strange statement about a missing person with whom he had no romantic relationship. Michael also has connections to cults, and he is rumored to practice the occult. Mike knows Dorothy's father, Jacob. This would fit with the theory that the stalker did not continue to call Dorothy's parents because her father might recognize his voice. Mike would also have had access to Dorothy's work schedule and could have known exactly when she was at work and when she was at home. However, the evidence is not sufficient to launch an investigation against him. Michael Butler dies in 2014 without ever being officially named as a suspect. However, Dorothy's son Sean, who is now an adult, remains convinced that Mike is his mother's killer. Some people, on the other hand, are convinced that Dorothy was the victim of a serial killer. The disappearance of Patricia Jean Snyder plays a central role in this theory. Patricia disappears on July 31, 1982. The 25-year-old waitress finishes her shift at the Palomino station in Indian Hills, California in the early hours of the morning. Her boss sees two red-haired men in the parking lot at that time. At around 3:45 a.m., Patricia calls from a gas station in Petley House and reports that her car has broken down. After that, her trail goes cold. A Riverside County Sheriff's deputy later finds her car burning in a field near the intersection of Doolittle Avenue and Van Buren Boulevard between 5 and 6 a.m. The fire was deliberately set. To this day, there is no trace of Patricia Snyder. Although there are a few parallels between the cases, no evidence has ever been found to suggest that the two women were victims of the same perpetrator. This theory is therefore considered one of the less likely ones. In the months before Dorothy's disappearance, Another series of crimes caused a stir in the region. 4 Vietnamese men kidnapped and assaulted several women in the area. At least one victim was taken to a rural part of Anaheim, an area known at the time as Anaheim Hills. This is where Dorothy's car was later found. 3 of the men lived in Irvine, the 4th in Santa Ana, near where the car was later found. Even though these men usually released their victims after the crimes, there is speculation that Dorothy may have fought back and was killed as a result. This theory is supported by a clue that has been mentioned repeatedly. It is said that Dorothy's colleagues saw a small car driving in front of Dorothy's car as it passed them in front of the hospital. Some conclude from this that there must have been several perpetrators. The last theory I will discuss in detail is that the perpetrator must be one of Dorothy's colleagues. No one else would know her daily routine so well and always know where she is. It is speculated that the perpetrator saw Dorothy leaving with Conrad Bostrand and may have perceived this as betrayal or rejection. The anonymous caller who later calls the newspaper also knows about Conrad's spider bite. This also suggests that he comes from Dorothy's work environment. Nevertheless, there is no official suspect among her colleagues. Dorothy's parents, Jacob and Vera, never see their daughter's case solved. Jacob dies in 1994 on Dorothy's birthday. Vera follows him in 2002. Sean later says of Vera that Dorothy's disappearance completely destroyed her and that she has never been the same since. He himself is still searching for answers and hopes that his mother's death will one day be solved. And that brings us to the end of today's video. Who do you think kidnapped and killed Dorothy? Feel free to leave me a comment. This also helps support this channel. If you want to support me even more, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe. Thank you in advance. Other than that, there's not much else to say. Have a good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on when you're watching this video, and I hope to see you again in the next video. Until then, bye guys.